What's going on, guys? Welcome back to The Shelf, and today we are talking about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 4, Day 1. So at the top, I will just say that overall, I did enjoy this episode. I thought it was very solid. It has some very memorable moments in it, specifically harkening back to the game. But I will just say that I also do have concerns about the overall pacing of the show, and I'm very curious about where we're going to be left off 3 weeks from now when the show ends, or at least this season. We will get into the nitty-gritty here in a moment, but I do just feel as though I need to point out that we only have 3 episodes left. And if this was a 10-episode season instead of 7, I would have no problems at all with where we're at. Knowing that we only have 3 left as opposed to 6, it's a little worrying, and further, exacerbates this issue that I've been speaking on for a little while now, which is just the nature of TV these days, where you wait 2 years for a show to come out and you get 7 episodes of television, and then you have to wait another 2 years. It's just very frustrating as a viewer. That said, if the show ends, or the season, I should say, if the season ends and I'm satisfied with where they left it, and, it ends on a good hook, then, it's okay. It is what it is, right? What are you going to do? So this episode begins with a flashback to 2018, and we're getting a look at some Fedra soldiers in Seattle, and we're focusing on Isaac here. And so Isaac's with this team of soldiers, and, the first thing we see in this episode is Josh Peck, which I thought was kind of funny. I was like, oh shit, it's Josh Peck. But so he's playing this kind of really arrogant soldier, and all of the other guys are kind of joking about the civilians that they harass on a daily basis. And, it's Isaac, and there's this one idealistic sort of trooper who must be fairly new. And then all the rest of them are just very, jaded, cynical guys who really seem to take pleasure in, the oppression that they are inflicting on the civilians, right? So we see that Isaac is going to betray Fedra and join the WLF in what appears to be sort of their formative years. So Isaac kills the group of Fedra soldiers right in front of the WLF, seemingly in order to kind of prove his allegiance to the WLF. He did it in front of a whole group of them in order to sort of solidify his status as firmly not on the Fedra side of things anymore. And he also spares the idealistic guy that I mentioned earlier, so he brings him over and sort of tells him, all right, now make your choice. You can be, because it seemed like it was early for him. He kind of had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. He was new to Fedra. So, and he seemingly, could have been swayed in either direction. So Isaac seemed to recognize that and said, we could use another man, I guess, right? It's just economic. So he brings him over, and, eventually they both join the WLF. So this scene with Isaac is very cool. It starts the episode off, and it sort of gives you a sense of where Isaac is at. And then we flash forward later in the episode to a scene where Isaac is interrogating a Seraphite leader. And it's this really intense sequence where Isaac is just very cold, and you can tell that he's done this before, and he's not moved by the plight of the Seraphites. In his mind, they are firmly the enemy. They are like animals to him. His whole attitude towards them is sort of emblematic of the show's entire theme and messaging, which is just the way that these factions all sprout up in the aftermath of the apocalypse, and the way that they all vie for power and control. And in everyone's mind, they are the hero, right? No one sees themselves as the villain. And that's what's so interesting about The Last of Us and other shows that take place in that post-apocalyptic setting, right? What's interesting is the human-to-human interplay, and not so much the zombie stuff. That stuff is almost there for set dressing. It's really almost an afterthought. But anyway, this torture sequence is very intense because Isaac is sort of going about it in a way that really implies that he doesn't care very much, which is, sort of a given, right, with the torture scene. But he's sort of giving this monologue about cookware, and, it's very blasé. He's very casual about it. And all of this is in service of him heating up a pan so that he can burn this Seraphite with it. And it's very cold, and it really serves to kind of show you where Isaac is at as a character. And it's really cool because in the game, you don't really get a ton of characterization for Isaac. So, that's what I love about what the show is doing, both seasons, is the way that they take these background characters and bring them more to the forefront and give them a little bit more time to shine and make them feel more dynamic and well-rounded. And I want to give a shout out to the Seraphite who is being tortured by Isaac. His name is Ryan Mason, or Mason, that's the actor's name. And he gives a really memorable performance. He gets to do the most with the least amount of screen time. Like, his presence on screen is going to be very memorable for me. He's very vulnerable. He's completely nude, and he's just at Isaac's, at his whim, basically. And he's so sure in his convictions, and you almost feel as though he has somehow wormed his way under Isaac's sort of mental fortitude. Like, Isaac comes across as this character with very strong, like, he's very sure of himself. He doesn't mess around. But the way that this Seraphite guy is so sure of his stance, he's like, you get the idea that somehow left an impression on Isaac and made him question himself just a little bit. He gives this sort of monologue about how every day a WLF soldier leaves to go join the Seraphites, but no Seraphites have ever left to join the WLF. Isaac doesn't really seem to care about that until he goes to burn him again for the second time, and he's already holding his hand out, like, ready to be burned, which just shows, like, he would rather be tortured than tell Isaac what he wants to know, which is, when do the Seraphites plan to attack next and where? That's what Isaac's trying to get out of him, but he soon realizes that it's going to be futile and he's not going to get anything out of him. So he just kind of puts him out of his misery. So it's a really effective scene, really cool, and yeah, sort of, like I said, emblematic of where the show is at in general. So anyway, that's all the Isaac stuff out of the way. Some of my favorite stuff of the episode, definitely a highlight. I love Jeffrey Wright. He's an amazing actor, really, really great. And I believe he voices Isaac in the game, so it was a really great opportunity that they had to cast him as Isaac because he is the right age, and it all just worked out really well. So getting back into Ellie and Dina's story, they have arrived in Seattle and they're, slowly exploring the city, and they're looting and trying to find supplies when Dina finds these pregnancy tests, and she takes them without Ellie knowing. And if you've played the game at all, then you do know that Dina in the game also gets pregnant. And so I wasn't sure yet if they were going to carry that through. We had a tease of it in the last episode where Dina threw up when she found all the dead Seraphites, which could have just been, a natural reaction to seeing a bunch of gore. But it also is further explained in this episode that it is in fact because she's experiencing morning sickness. So the two are back out on the streets again, and they encounter what appears to be the aftermath of a skirmish between the WLF and Fedra. So rather than take the reckless approach of proceeding in the daytime, they decide that they would be better suited if they proceeded at night. So in the meantime, they take refuge in this music store, and we get the iconic serenade scene where Ellie plays Take On Me by a-ha for Dina. And it's a really great scene. It's, again, ripped right out of the game, and it's really, really good. They execute it very well here. I was impressed with Bella Ramsey. It appears that she is, singing, right? It's definitely her accent. It's her voice. And whether it was pre-recorded after the fact, and she's just lip-syncing to it, regardless, very impressive. And then she also seems to be playing the guitar as well. So hats off to her. She really did a great job. And Dina's, sitting there reacting and being serenaded. And, you really feel just in her facial acting that by this point she's like totally smitten with Ellie and she's super into it. And, it's a great progression of their relationship. What I like about it so much is it's these small character moments amidst all this ongoing violence and death and destruction, And it's just a quiet moment where two characters kind of come together just a little bit more, and I always enjoy those in shows like this. So once night falls, though, the two of them proceed to this radio station, which is this WLF outpost. It's where they were going to go during the day, but they decided that it would be too obvious and they would definitely be caught or they would be seen coming. So they proceed under the cover of nightfall. And once they get in, they discover all these WLF corpses, and they find these like bloody epitaphs written on the walls. And it's reminiscent of the Seraphites and, you know, the sort of messages that they leave behind that they witnessed prior in the previous episode. So they're able to connect the fact that these WLF soldiers were killed by the Seraphites. So then moments later, they hide, and all these WLF soldiers burst into the room, and they discover the aftermath of these grisly murders. And I mean, they are grisly. Like, these WLF soldiers are like strung up, and their insides are all hanging out, and it's pretty messed up. The sets here are really great. This whole entire set with the radio station and the subway that follows this scene, all that stuff is really great, and it looks awesome. The subway sequence, which we're about to talk about, has this really prominent red lighting all throughout it that's, again, very reminiscent of the games. It's very easy for me to connect the two because that sequence is very memorable. It's very tense in the game, where you're eluding both infected and soldiers, and you know, you're using the WLF against the infected and vice versa in order to make your way through. It's a really great sequence, and I feel as though they capture it really well in the show here. But anyway, getting ahead of myself here, Ellie and Dina evade the WLF. They run into the subway to get away from them. The WLF follow them into the subway, and chaos ensues, basically, and infected are called, and the whole thing turns into a big skirmish. And, you know, Ellie and Dina are getting away, and they get stuck in like the subway turnstile thing, and Dina is just about to get bitten by an infected when Ellie cleverly sticks her arm out and gets bit instead in order to save Dina. And at this point in the show, I forgot that Dina doesn't know that Ellie's immune. I for some reason thought that she knew because of how close they are, but then I remembered, oh no, Dina never has been told this. Like, Ellie never told her. So in her mind, Ellie's dead. And once I realized that, I was like, oh shit, that's pretty effective. Like, that's pretty intense. So then after that sequence, the two of them hide out in the abandoned theater, which is, again, so prominently featured in the game. They go in and they hide, and it's pouring rain just like in the game. And then you realize that Dina is like about to shoot Ellie, because in her mind, any moment she's going to turn now. And it becomes a stalemate where Ellie is trying to convince her that she's immune. And, you know, I'm putting myself in Dina's shoes during this scene, and I'm like, yeah, dude, like, in her, as far as she knows, nobody has ever been immune in the history of this whole thing going on. So if someone is telling me that they're immune all of a sudden, I'm going to just assume that they're lying, because it's a pretty outlandish claim. But then Ellie is like, all right, just give me some time and you'll see that I'm not lying. And, you know, it eventually progresses, and, you know, Ellie falls asleep for a little while. She wakes up later and she's still not turned. It becomes pretty clear that Ellie's telling the truth. And so once Dina can maybe relax a little bit, she reveals to Ellie that she's pregnant. Emotions are so high during all this. They both have revealed very, you know, well-kept secrets to each other, very important secrets, you know, Ellie being immune, Dina being pregnant. And it's all a lot of tense, high emotions. And then, you know, the two wind up having this sexual encounter. And, you know, this was an interesting choice because in the game, they have their first sort of sexual encounter way earlier, but I think that it makes sense during this moment because, like I said, emotions are running incredibly high. And as far as Dina was concerned, Ellie was about to be dead, but now she knows that she's not dead. So I'm imagining in this moment, she's very relieved, and she's like, okay, like, that's a load off. Now let me further relieve myself by divulging this secret. And then she reveals that, you know, she took all these pregnancy tests. And so, you know, it's this whole thing. So then the next morning comes, and Ellie and Dina have this very heartfelt conversation about Jesse and, you know, Dina's sexuality and all this stuff. And, you know, it's interesting character stuff, but I couldn't help but feel as though a little bit of it was unnecessary. Like, a lot of this stuff was already a given. Like, Dina talks about her being bisexual, and these are things that we already knew based on her actions. Like, we knew that she was involved with Jesse. Obviously, she's pregnant by him, but now she's having sex with Ellie. Like, we already know this stuff. I think it would just be a little bit more subtle and, you know, give the audience a bit more credit and understand that we're able to infer these things, that, yeah, she's had a past where she's conflicted about this stuff because she felt like she's being pulled in two different directions. Like, we already know this. And we have, and this only is a problem, by the way, because we have so few episodes. Like, in my opinion, this is wasted screen time, where this could have been spent instead advancing the plot, because we have a lot of plot to get to. And instead, we're kind of wasting a little bit of that time with just dialogue that was a little unnecessary, in my opinion. But anyway, that's a bit of a minor nitpick. All things considered, this was a pretty solid episode. We do advance the plot in enough ways. Really wish we had a 10-episode season instead of 7. You know, until I've seen the whole season, will I truly be able to assess how desperately those extra 3 episodes will be missed. It's possible that when this season ends, I'll be like, yeah, maybe we could have done with 1 more, but I'm okay with what decisions they made. Or we could get to the finale and I'd be like, damn, really wish we had 3 more episodes to, you know, flesh this thing out and get us to where we need to be. Because, like I've said in previous videos, Last of Us 2 is a long game. It's like 27 hours. And, you know, I know we have season 3, which is going to continue the story, but who knows how long that season will be. I just have worries. I'm irritated that we have to wait so long for these seasons, and then they're so short. It's damn near a mini-series. Like, do you guys remember when TV shows used to be like 22 episodes, and they were all 45 minutes long? I remember that. And, like, granted, the budgets are way high. You're paying for crazy sets, crazy production, the best talent, great writers, great cinematographers. These things are borderline movies now. So it's not even really TV anymore at this point. It's like this weird sort of middle ground where network television and movies sort of met. But again, this is a different conversation. I've talked about it in a different video. So anyway, the episode ends with Ellie and Dina overhearing over the radio that these WLF soldiers are planning to meet at this hospital, and they mention Nora's name. And Nora is one of the people who were at the lodge where Joel was killed, and she's friends with Abby. So they decide that they're going to go there because they know that Nora will know where Abby is. So now that Ellie knows that Dina's pregnant, though, it's a whole different ball game, right? So Ellie's like, listen, you should probably just go back because I don't want to risk you or this pregnancy. But Dina, having, you know, sort of solidified and, you know, consummated their relationship, is not really seeming to be wanting to be parted from her. So the two of them resolve that they're going to go and finish this out together the way that they started it. And that's where the episode ends. So yeah, overall, good episode. I did enjoy it. It was solid. And yeah, not too many concerns. I think we are maybe having too much dialogue where it's already been explained through the events of the show and what these characters have shown to us already. But, you know, aside from that, really good episode. Yeah, I'm excited to see where things go. We only got 3 left, so you have to imagine that things are going to start to pick up, and then eventually we'll be in the penultimate episode where things usually really go down. Yeah, anyway, guys, what are you thinking about The Last of Us Season 2? How are you guys feeling about it? Do you share some of my concerns? Are you not really that worried about it? Or are you just excited to see how it all plays out? I know I am. I'm definitely staying a little cautious, but I'm also very excited because I did really like Season 1, and I know that these creators have a vision in mind and they're going to execute that vision. So it just remains to be seen whether or not they have enough time to do it in. All right, guys, so like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't. We talk about new movies, old movies, TV shows, physical media, and horror in general. So with all that being said, guys, please take care and watch more movies.